gang shit. That's all I'm on.
So today we're gonna be listening to Joe Rogan and Patrick David from the PBD podcast discuss Blackrock. But I'm gonna start us off by talking about Aladdin. Aladdin is the software that BlackRock developed, and it currently manages $21 trillion of raw money. That's not accounting for the derivatives. So I would say that number could be multiplied by a factor of 10, possibly 100, which is insane. Um, Aladdin started in 1988's financial software. It was first sold to other companies. BlackRock began to sell Aladdin in 1999. This technology is integral to who we are as a firm and is embedded in everything we do, thus differentiating us. Um, this was developed by Charles S. Halleck, who took the lead on, I think it's Larry Fink's brainchild. Um, and it now manages, it is an AI. I mean, I would say the AI portion of it truly went live in 2003, and this has been managing a bulk of the financial assets in the world because other banks are using Aladdin to manage their assets as well. During the 2008 financial crisis, Aladdin was used to help identify where to spend the trillions of dollars and who to bail out. This is also potentially why all these banks got caught with their pants down and all had bonds that went negative on their balance sheets, because if everybody is operating by the same playbook, even though Aladdin is amazing and has been almost unfallible, it's only as good as the human intel that it receives. So when the Fed is saying interest rates will remain low for 2 more years and they feed that into Aladdin, it gives them an investment mix. Then the Fed comes out 6 months later and decides to accelerate interest rate rising because inflation is running hotter than they could tolerate. So then Aladdin failed simply because it was lied to by the humans. But likely this is why you see a lot of banks with the same mixture of assets on their books, because they're all using this because it's so good. This is what has made BlackRock the force of nature in this world that it is today. And most people have no clue the extent of what they manage and the power that they have. They are buying U.S. real estate sight unseen because Aladdin has been unleashed on the U.S. housing market and is acquiring assets that will never again be released to citizen homeowners. You will rent, you will own nothing, and you will be happy. This is how they execute that plan.
Think Soros, State Street, Vanguard, Blackrock. How much have you looked at what they're doing and what their ties are?
I've looked at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're pretty much running everything.
Yeah.
S&P 500, the number that 88% of the companies on S&P 500, 88% of them, the largest shareholder of those companies is either State Street, BlackRock, or Vanguard. 88% of them. Okay. And then you see their influence in defense contracts. Okay. So we went through a deal. I'm like, let me see if these guys, this ESG, Larry Fink, Vanguard, State Street, if they have any influence on military contract, defense contracts. If you Google the largest shareholder for Raytheon, 3 out of the 4 top shareholders of Raytheon, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. It could be top 3 with Raytheon, but I think it's 3 out of 4. If you go look up General Dynamics, if you go look up Boeing, if you go look up, Northrop Grumman, okay? And then you work backwards and you say, oh.
And it's not just about the raw figures here. If they own a decent amount of any of these companies, then they also may have the ability to exert some control. So where they are diversely invested and have large portions of all these giant companies. They have their fingers in everything. So you look at Apple and Google and you say, wow, these companies are so big. BlackRock has got fingers in all of these big companies, and thus can reach out and be like, hey, we got X number of $1 billion in your company. We don't like this. We don't like that. We'd like this. We'd like that. So it's untold types of influence that you really have to dig into it to really start to understand what these things actually are, because they're scary.
Okay, how much money is that in what these guys are doing? You'll find our, the amount of money we spent in our military, $744 billion on how much we're making from defense, but you'll see some numbers saying last year is 13% of our GDP, which is around $850 billion. That's more than the next 10 combined. We gave more money to Ukraine than Russia spent on their military last year. And when you look at these contracts, then you're like, okay, Fink is there, these guys are there. Okay, let's go look at Hollywood. Same thing you see there. Let's go look at pharmaceutical. Let's go look at this. And you're like, wait a minute. These guys essentially have a monopoly. Well, how big is Blackrock? $10 trillion. How big is $10 trillion? Only 2 countries have a bigger GDP than what BlackRock has, assets under management, U.S. and China. That's how big BlackRock is. So then they went and they started getting all these other guys to sign on and say, hey, we want you to participate with the same thing as well with ESG. And they ended up having, I think, that 31 signers. I think end of 2022, they got 60 something signers for a total of $70 trillion of assets under management that they're controlling. So now they're controlling other places. And just recently, if you saw the rebuilding of Ukraine, did you see this contract?
So I just uploaded something to the channel the other day about what the House is actually debating. They had a debate about access to gender reassignment surgery for children. And the debate was, should we allow children to have access to this directly? Should we ban access to it? And I think that the government shouldn't even be debating this. They should stay out. It's between the parent, the child, and the doctor. They shouldn't regulate it away so that you don't have access to it, and they shouldn't regulate it so that a child has access to it without parental permission. So that's what they're talking about, instead of doing their job, which is to regulate things like this that have real power in the world that can impact your life. It's conveniently ignored because there's too much money involved. They don't want to jeopardize their income. They're busy making millions of dollars on top of their $175,000 salary that is paid out of tax dollars. So they have to, really make sure that they're serving their true masters. And serving their true masters would not be to give any sort of regulation or oversight to entities like BlackRock and Vanguard that clearly have so much influence, and most people don't realize it, but if they did, they would say that this is a problem.
Rebuilding of Ukraine, $400 billion contract. BlackRock and Chase is helping rebuild Ukraine. And then, okay, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what the hell is going on here? They have that much control to get everybody to do what they want them to do? Yes. So Dylan Mulvaney, who cares? Why? Bud Light. How does that tie up? You got the DEI, the HRC, the human rights, and all this stuff. And then you go even deeper, which is even the crazier part, with, the education, schools. Like, the biggest union we have in America, I think it's National Education something. NEA is the largest union we have. 3 million teachers are part of that union. And you look at that and you go deeper in that with open society and who's funding it, who's the money behind these organizations. Comes back, Soros. How do you feel about the kind of power they have right now to fight against them? Because this isn't like a billionaire can come out and say, I'm going to go up against these guys. They don't have a little bit of money. A billionaire to these guys is nothing. They got the kind of control that can make companies fire boards. They can replace CEOs. They can replace leaders if they don't like. They have their hands so much into it where many times when people say the people of power, I'm kind of like, who are the people of power? Are you convinced these guys are really running the world, or what do you think about what some of these bigger companies are doing, like State Street, Vanguard, and Blackrock?
Well, they certainly have massive amounts of influence. What do you think they're doing?
It's the question is, how do you fight it? Like, for example, the way we fight mainstream is by what? The show that we do. And we have to be patient. It's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years. Now you have some influence, right? Okay, we can fight. There is an actual strategy on how to fight that. No problem. You got a kid in school who's a bully. He's bigger than you. He keeps bullying you. You have a strategy on how to beat the guy. You take a year, jiu-jitsu 2 years, this, that. Boom. One fight, he knows, I'm never going to touch Joe again. Screw this thing. I'm not doing this no more, right? There is a play to it. When you have this much, Joe, 88% of S&P 500 companies, that is a form of a monopoly. If I'm a president, whether it's a Trump or whoever else goes out there and does it, our monopoly law in America is 50%. They say 50%. Like if you tie and said, at what point is it 50%? I've done calls with the FTC. Like we had one of our guys' technology we were using. The FTC called and said, hey, we want to have a call with you because they're thinking about buying this other technology company and we're worried it's going to be a monopoly. So we had the call, okay? At the end of the call with us, with a bunch of different people, we said we love their product, we love their product. That deal didn't end up happening, okay? The monopoly law. Some of these guys are influencing it. But they say 50% is a monopoly law. Do you know how many people in America have an iPhone versus Droid? Do you know what the numbers, market shares in America with iPhones?
I think it's like 60.
58%, 60%. Yeah. That is already a monopoly. But who's knocking on the door of Apple? Tim Cook saying, hey, Tim, you got 58%. That's breaking a monopoly law. Nobody is. I think someone's got to break apart. You know, in 1993, I don't know which senator it was, these guys that were trying to get the defense contractors to be better at the pricing, what they were charging, because they were overcharging DOD, and DOD people don't know what the hell is going on. They're like, yeah, okay, how much? 68.
All right, let's I'm gonna show this right here. This is illustrating what he is talking about. One of either Blackrock, Vanguard, or State Street is the largest shareholder in 88% of S&P 500 companies. If you don't know what the S&P 500 is, it is the list of the largest 500 companies in America that are publicly traded. I'm going to put the links to this page, and I also have some information on the details of Aladdin, so that it's not just me talking. All that stuff will be in the description if you guys want to take a look at that stuff. This, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, but this is something pretty critical that we should address. And the lawmakers obviously are not going to do it on their own. So the only way that they're going to even address this is if we make it a priority instead of arguing about race amongst each other or gender. You know, if you care about your quality of life, I don't know how much your gender in today's age. I don't know how much your gender or your race versus the decisions you make really impacts your daily life. Now, the media wants you to think that it's all about the color of your skin, but there are definitely trailer parks full of white people, as well as, you know, trailer parks full of black people. It just depends on what part of the country you go to. There are plenty of poor people of all races and genders in this country that are disenfranchised, that do not have equal opportunities to, you know, and access to the things that most of us enjoy. I mean, there are people below the poverty line, and instead we're arguing amongst ourselves about nonsense instead of saying, hey, how come there's corporations that own 88% of the largest companies out there, and this isn't a problem? This is the definition of a monopoly. They're monopolizing the entire system at the market level.
$1 million do it. $1.2 billion do it. I'm not going to over-negotiate the money. They took 51 defense companies, and they brought it down to only 5. It's only 5 companies right now when you want to buy anything. Think about that. So defense contractors is 5. We know how these guys make money. Earlier, I was asking you a question, why do you think vaccine? And you're like, Pat, that's how they make their money, right? I mean, if you and I run a hotel, rooms are empty, we're not making money. We need people to stay in the rooms. If you and I are running a hospital, we need people on the beds to make money.
Yeah.
If there's no people on the beds, we ain't making money. If these 5 contractors are fighting for $744 billion, what do they want more of? Wars. They want more people dying. You know the Papa John's saying, better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's.
Mm-hmm.
These guys is more wars, more people dying, more profits, defense contractors, right? That's a valid concern that I have. Because behind closed doors, this whole military-industrial complex, when you look at the numbers,
There's a reason that we keep re-entering wars and staying in wars. It is literally vital to our economy to be dropping $25 million missiles and producing $100 million drones. I mean, the amount of money that's thrown around, this is a large part of what stimulates our economy. When your regular Main Street people don't only control 10% of the wealth, 90% of the country, 10% of the wealth. So we don't even have the capacity to move the needle. The only people that can move the needle is the 10% or less that own 90% of the wealth, and you are talking about corporate entities and people who are able to move the needle in the market, in the economy. And when you start churning out $100 billion or $100 million drones and these missile systems and all this stuff, that's what really gets our economy going. So we don't have good industry outside building bombs. That's our primary export is war. That's why we keep going back to it. We need it. And the only way to prevent that is to fundamentally change the way that the economy and the system works in this country and shift away from the military industrial complex that Roosevelt warned us about continuing down this path. And lo and behold, he was very sage in his advice, and all the bad things that he speculated about, where the industry of war would grab this country by its tail, and now you've got the dog's not wagging its tail anymore.
Whoever becomes the president, unfortunately, this guy's an anti-establishment president. Good. Unfortunately, if you're an anti-establishment president, everyone's going to come after you, especially these military defense contractors. Mm-hmm. So if a president got up and said, if I'm going to be the president, here's what we're going to be doing.
People don't want to hear this, but this is why part of the reason that people hate Trump so much. He does not want us to be in wars. He's a nationalist. He wants to have borders. He wants to bring the troops home. That is not the American agenda. The American agenda is to continue to stay overseas. And I mean, clearly, what happened when Biden got in? How long were we really out of war? Barely any time at all. That messy with Afghanistan withdrawal, where we basically gifted that country more military assets than the Taliban had more Blackhawk helicopters than England, the UK. When we pulled out, we left them all kinds of military hardware. Who cares? China's in there making deals for the lithium mines. A couple days after we're gone, the schools shut down, all our progress gone, and we gave our enemy, supposedly, if you believe the narrative, our enemy, we gave them all that military hardware and turned them into a pretty legitimate military power if they learn how to use it. And then we go right into the Russia-Ukraine thing, almost immediately. So we need, I don't know. We kind of pushed Russia into invading, and it's like, perfect, back to war. Great. I mean, they love it.
We have to look at all the contracts. You can't overcharge us. We have to open it up. You have to sell some of your companies. You have to let them be independent again. You have to do this. You have to let them go public, separate, whatever way you got to break them apart to have competition again, because we don't have that today. So that is a major concern where we say we have a commander-in-chief, but really the commander-in-chief is Larry Fink today. The guy running Blackrock is really the president of the United States. if we look at the kind of influence he's got in every industry, Joe. And he's like, well, I kind of feel bad. I'm ashamed that all the weaponization, the word, ESG is being used and all this other stuff. And Elon tweeted about the ESG. I don't know if you remember when Elon tweeted about ESG, saying the S in ESG is satanic. Okay? So this is a part where even a Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner, says, look, I love Larry Fink, but I'm not interested in having an emperor. Some words like that he said about Larry Fink. So this motive, and by the way, Larry Fink is an interesting guy because he majored in college political science. His aspirations was politics. He accidentally got into money, and he learned to trade, and then he lost $100 million at 36 years old, I think, and then he teams up with Schwartzman, and they start this company, and after a couple years, they got $5 billion under management, $8 billion, and $32 billion, and then they have a difference because, he wants to give equity, and Jamie's, Schwartzman's like, no, and then they separate. But influence of politics, you get into business, you're a billionaire. It's you, Soros. So I'm extremely concerned about what these guys are up to. And we think our president is the most powerful person. That person's not. Because behind closed doors, they're going to be like, look, guys, let's relax. That guy's only going to be there for 4 to 8 years. We're going to be all right. He'll be out. We're running the world. We're okay. We were running America, but now we're running the world. We control all the ETFs in America. We're controlling all this stuff. Everyone has to come through us, and we can tell everybody what to do because everybody fears not getting money from us, from being downgraded. A Tesla on ESG score is nothing, but a Philip Morris gets an A rating. How the hell the company that's Philip Morris has a better environmental social governance score, DEI, not DEI, but the CEI, the score they give it over Tesla? So they can bully some of these guys.
Let me ask you this. What do you think the goal of ESG is? Why do you think they're establishing these sort of parameters? Like why?
Since they're not explaining ESG, an ESG score is a way to assign a quantitative metric, such as a numerical score or letter rating, to the environmental, social, and government's ESG efforts undertaken by a specific organization. So this is like a social credit score for a company. It's not just the amount of money they make. Now you're considering, are they woke? Are they caring for the environment? And what groups are they giving preference to? Are they, just letting the free market work it out? Or are they structuring themselves to align with some sort of, communist equality ideals? And so companies are trying to get their ESG scores up. So this is why some of their virtue signaling behavior and all this crap exists, is I'm trying to boost my score,
Why is ESG a thing, and what's the benefit of it for them?
So Schultz said something very interesting. Schultz says, look, these guys are driven by money. They're not going to do anything to destroy an economy, to lose their own money, because they want that. I said, okay, it's a very good, Andrew Schultz. I said, that's a very good point, on what you're saying. Fine. So, you know how sometimes Michael Jackson, you see the interview with him with kids. Oh, they're just sleeping in the bed. That's all it is. And we're just having a great time, and we're storytelling. And like, yeah, bro, I get it. It's a little weird. You got a 7, 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid sleeping in your bed, and, all this stuff. And it's a little bit fishy what you're talking about here.
It's incredibly relevant to the conversations today about Sound of Freedom and the media saying that it's all QAnon conspiracies, even after Jeffrey Epstein's Fuck Island was discovered, and we know who was on the jets and who was at the townhouse, and there's no official list out of the sex offender criminal pedophiles, but I mean, I would just assume that anybody who's flying to the island with him or stays in his townhome, the amount of cameras that were in those residences, obviously he's recording everybody. Anybody who came over and did anything with any of the girls that were surrounding him probably were compromised immediately, because most of the girls were underage. He had hundreds of girls down in Florida who were coming over and giving him massages for $200, performing sex acts. If they weren't willing to perform sex acts, he would give them $200 to bring their friends, and they wouldn't tell their friends, so they put their friends in that same situation in the same situation that they didn't want to participate in. And then it seems like the girls that were really willing and compliant, they were being groomed or selected for the island, where the real crazy stuff would go on. So, I mean, they try to like tone it down. Oh, this isn't really going on. We know it's going on. You're lying to us. The same thing. Everybody knew that this was weird with Michael Jackson, but I guess his music's so good that people don't care that he was molested. People who are molested are very likely to pass it on. So likely he was passing on the trauma that he experienced as a child to even more children, and he had the money to convince parents to leave their kids over there and the amusement park and animals to lure them in, and it was like a perfect little pedophile trap that he had set up. But to this day, Michael Jackson is a saint somehow when he's definitely not.
It's not normal. Well, if you're in Hollywood and you've slept with as many people as these people sleep, and then eventually you have to have other options, because what else do you do? You have to try new things. How many threesomes have you had? How many this? How many that? So you start trying all these other things, and sometimes these guys go to such and such place. Doesn't matter. It's kind of weird and fishy, right, on what you want to do. Great. Okay. So why are these guys doing what they're doing? You have all the money in the world. You live in a $100 million house. Not you, Larry Fink and some of these guys. I don't know if he lives in a $100 million house, but you got the money to live in a $100 million house. What else do you need?
Right.
You got nice cars. Jamie Dimon's got a $900 million art collection, according to an article. It's a nice art collection, right? You go to all the nice restaurants. You meet prime ministers. You meet presidents. And then maybe there comes a time when you're looking at a couple of these guys, they're presidents and prime ministers, and you tell yourself, I'd be a better president than you, bro. How the hell am I not reading the country? Or they tell themselves, you think you're a president? You're not a president. You work for me. What else is the motive?
But ESG, how does that factor into
But the point is control, is what I'm saying. So the motive becomes control more than money. After you have all the money in the world, what's next?
Without ESG, financials, you can only dictate one dimension of a company's behavior. Profit. That's it. They're going to behave according to what is most profitable. ESG gives you three-dimensionality and allows you to say, what about your social? And we keep the financial metric, but now we add a social metric and we add an environmental metric, and now we have a way of really poking and prodding you into shifting yourself right where we want you to get that score where it needs to be. And if you don't comply, we'll just we'll do what the U.S. playbook is to sanction, economic punishment instead of going to war. Same playbook's used in the corporate world. Punish companies. Anyone who sticks their head up, punish them. Smash them down.
It's got to be control or a true vision. So Soros, when you're talking ESG, that story is a completely different story. You ever heard Soros' interview with 60 Minutes where he says, I see myself as a god? Have you ever seen this interview or what he says?
No.
Really?
He said he sees himself as a god.
Oh, my God. Jamie, do you mind pulling up the quote? I think it's, if you type in LA Times Soros God. If you type in LA Times Soros God, when you hear what he says, it's like the second to the last paragraph all the way to the bottom. The guy asks a question, about who he views himself as. I want to quote it properly, exactly what he says in this
Is there
interview.
a video of him saying
Yeah, 60 minutes. There's a video as well. So if you go all the way to the bottom, go a little bit higher, on the quote. About means the next of my friends, no, go a little higher. I think it's a little higher. I'm kind of.
It seems that Soros believes he was anointed by God. I fancied myself as some sort of god, he once wrote. If truth be known, I carried some rather potent messianic fantasies with me from childhood, which I felt I had to control, otherwise they might get me in trouble. Put the link to this article in there in the description as well. That's insane.
sort of keep going higher. Sort of a dim, keep going higher, keep going higher, keep going higher. Prevailing values, a little higher, a little higher. There's a part where he says, keep going. What year is this article, by the way? Is this it's an old article. It's supposed
October
to be
2004.
That's the one. This is the one.
Right there?
Okay, right there. It seems that Soros believes he was anointed by God. I fancied myself as some kind of a god. If truth be known, I carried some rather potent messianic fantasies with me from childhood, which I felt I had to control, otherwise they might get me in trouble. And then on the next line, when asked by Britain's independent newspaper to elaborate on the passage, Soros says, it is sort of a disease when you consider yourself some kind of a god, the creator of everything, but I feel comfortable about it now since I began to live it out.
What a psycho.
Yeah, but I get it. It's a little weird. You got.
So, I hope that was enlightening. I don't know if I've really got much more to add. It's a beautiful encapsulation of a huge problem that's facing America. Just trying to give it more exposure. I wish Joe Rogan was still on YouTube, but I'm going to be probably doing some reactions to full-length episodes at some point. I know people, including myself, love to watch Rogan, so I'm gonna be part of some of his conversations unwillingly. You know the creepy guy that you don't want around, and he just shows up and he's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm here too." That's gonna be me on the internet. So look forward to that. I'll see you guys soon. Love you.
I'm not suicidal. I would never kill myself.